Rick Hawk here in the Wildwood lair. We're messing around with these new Fender Vintera guitars. There are quite a few. We're just gonna give you a little sampler of some of the glorious offerings that Fender has come out with from their Mexican facility, giving some vintage morsels and some modified vintage morsels in a variety of ways that are gonna be cost effective and hopefully inspiring for people to make music with. Isn't that what it's all about? Sorry, some people get mad when I yell. People go, why does everyone have to yell? Because I'm a passionate man. And I like guitars, doggone it. And I've got kind of a cool specimen in my hands right here. So from what I understand, let's just kind of go through what's going on here. For each Vintera guitar, there's kind of a, well, at least for the 50s and 60s versions, there is a vintage correct version or a vintage, and then there's a modified version. The vintage version, like the one I have in my hands here, is going to have the traditional 7 1/4 radius vintage frets. This one's also got a big neck on it. If I had to guess what neck this is, I would say we're somewhere in between a 55 and a kind of a no-caster U-ish, somewhere in that nape of the neck. No pun intended. See what I did there? So it's a girthsome neck, a substantive neck. You have vintage style pickups. There is a conventional 3-way toggle switch. Of course, the vintage guitars back in the day would have had it so that in the, what we now know is the neck position, it would have been that kind of muddy tone that they had back in the day that they used. Sounds like the tone controls rolled off. So this has more of, you know, what people did with their vintage Telecasters. They'd put in a 3-way toggle switch. So it's neck, middle, is both pickups, of course, and the bridge pickup is in the back position. And all the different pickups that are used on all the Vintera guitars apparently were newly devised for the very purpose of these instruments. So it's a new flavor. And these are polyurethane. They are not nitro. So just another little caveat as far as the vintage treatment is concerned, which is just something that, again, at the price point makes it more accessible to the every person, shall we say. Okay, and that opening little salvo I played on the neck pickup, what's great about this guitar is indicative of Telecasters of old, where they kind of have onboard channel switching. Your neck pickup is squishy and glassy and a little mellow. Go to that back pickup and it's like, it's lead time. So it's kind of a cool, especially if you got a little gas on, you're going. Middle position's got the requisite squish. It's good for that kind of chatty stuff. It's good for, of course, the funkification. Of course, get the idea. It's got all the tones, and of course, all the things you like to do on a Tele. With the full-on heat. All right, folks, so this is the Vintera 50s vintage version of the Telecaster. Now I'm going to go to the 50s modified version. Let's ride. Hey folks, here's the modified version of the 50s Telecaster. It's got some fun stuff on it. Got to imagine that someone would do some modifications on a vintage instrument. Maybe the neck is not quite as huge, kind of rolled off a little bit. It's a little bit more comfy to behold, if you're into that kind of thing. Flatter radius, more conducive to string bendery, as we like to say. Actually, no one says that, but I just did. A little hotter pickup, give you a little bit more thwack, if you will. This is a musical term. And it's also, it has an S1 switch. It's got a 4-way toggle switch, so it gives you a little bit more tonal variance. Can you dig it? So check it out. Without the S1 switch engaged, in this 4 position of the toggle switch, which is usually the neck pickup all by itself on a standard Telecaster with a three-way switch. So when it's this extreme position, we're calling 4. It's the pickups in parallel. So it's, no, I'm sorry, it's in series. So it's got a little bit more meat to it. The next position over is going to be the neck all by itself. This one over is going to be the pickups in, both pickups in parallel. And of course the bridge pickup by itself. Okay, now I'm gonna hit that S1 switch. Whoa, I felt that right down to my plums. You hit that button, it engages some different tonal options for your listening and dining pleasure. It gives you a couple of different out of phase positions. So in this extreme position, it's still the bridge pickup. This is going to be an out of phase version. This position, still neck pickup. This position, another out of phase. Okay, let's add a little heat. See what we got. Add a little heat. Here in that out of phase position gets all kinds of quacky. Here's the neck position. Here's that other out of phase position. And then that bridge. It takes a licking and keeps on Vintera-ing. Can you dig it? So again, this is the Vintera 50s Telecaster modified with some extra ergonomics to make it get a vintage vibe, but with some modern ergonomics. And of course, the surf green with the black pickguard explodes the world of goodness in a good way. Spreading goodness is what I meant. I didn't mean any kind of frightful conflagration. I meant rock conflagration. That's one we can all get into. All right, folks, well, I kind of gave you a little guided tour of what's going on here on these Vintera guitars. As you use this Telecaster as an example. So again, to reiterate, of the 50s and 60s iterations of these Vinteras, there are 2 versions. There is a vintage version and then a modified version, which is going to have more modern ergonomics. And then there's 70s versions of these guitars as well, but they didn't really need a modified version because those 70s versions already kind of had some modern playability at that particular juncture in time. So I believe there's 50 new models, so plenty of stuff to choose from. So if you're a fan of Fender's past, fan of taking those vintage instruments and modifying them a little, but doing all of these things at a price point that doesn't make you want to have to or need to perhaps harvest organs, which is something I think it's best to avoid. So check them out. Fender Vintera guitars and basses, if I understand that correctly. Gregory Cockery here in the Wildwood Lair. Happy hunting, y'all. We'll see you later.